After my near-fatal car crash, my parents jetted off to Paris with my brother, leaving me broken in a Seattle ICU with a voicemail that chirped, "We're off to Paris. Don't ruin our trip with calls." So I didn't. I froze their accounts, canceled their flights, and cut off the fortune I'd been funneling them, leaving them stranded and stunned when they realized their free ride was over. The world came back in fragments, sharp, jagged edges of sound and pain. A steady beep sliced through the fog in my head, relentless, like a metronome counting down to something I couldn't grasp. My eyelids felt like they were glued shut, heavy with a weight I didn't understand. When I finally forced them open, the sterile white of a hospital room burned my retinas. Tubes snaked from my arms, and a dull ache throbbed through my entire body, radiating from places I couldn't even name yet. I was alive, but it didn't feel like a victory. Not yet. I'm Chloe Bennett, 29 years old, and I never thought I'd wake up in a Seattle ICU with steel rods pinning my shattered pelvis together, my lungs wheezing from a puncture, and my skull pounding from a fracture that had left me in a coma for 3 days. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst was the worst voice waiting on my phone, the one that would crack open my world like a fault line splitting the earth. I didn't notice the phone at first. My left arm was immobilized in a sling, and my right hand trembled as I reached for the bedside table, knocking over a plastic cup of water. The nurse, a guy with kind eyes and a name tag reading Noah, rushed over, steadying the table before the spill could reach the floor. "Easy, Chloe," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You've been through hell. Let's take it slow." Slow was the last thing I wanted. My brain was a jumbled mess, but one thought screamed louder than the rest. My family. Where were they? My parents, Richard and Vanessa, and my younger brother, Liam. They had to be here, right? They'd be in the waiting room, pacing, worried sick. That's what families do when their daughter nearly dies in a car crash. I clung to that image like a lifeline, even as a cold knot tightened in my chest. "Noah," I croaked, my throat raw from the ventilator they'd pulled out hours ago. "My family. Have you seen them?" His face flickered just for a second before he masked it with a professional smile. "They were notified right after the accident. Let me check with the desk, okay?" He squeezed my hand gently and stepped out, leaving me alone with the beeping monitors and the weight of my own dread. I fumbled for my phone, wincing as pain shot through my ribs. The screen was cracked but functional, glowing with notifications, missed calls from work, texts from colleagues, but nothing from Mom, Dad, or Liam. My heart sank, but I told myself they were probably too frantic to text. Then I saw it, a voicemail from Mom, time-stamped yesterday morning. My fingers shook as I tapped play, holding the phone to my ear with an effort that made my arms scream. "Chloe, honey, it's Mom." Her voice was light, almost giddy, like she was calling to share good news. "Just wanted to let you know we're at SeaTac about to board our flight to Paris. Can you believe it? Liam's coming too. It's a family adventure. We've been planning this forever, so don't ruin our trip with calls, okay? International roaming's a fortune, and we'll be too busy sipping wine by the Louvre. Oh, and thanks for everything, sweetie. Love you." The message ended with a laugh. Liam's laugh, that cocky chuckle I'd heard 1,000 times when he'd gotten his way. The phone slipped from my hand, landing on the bed with a soft thud. My chest heaved, each breath a knife in my ribs, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the agony exploding inside me. They'd gone to Paris. My parents and brother had left me here, broken and alone, to chase their dream vacation. And the kicker? I'd paid for it. A $25,000 0 cents charge to a luxury travel agency processed hours after my crash glared at me from my Amex app when I checked later that day. Let me back up, because this isn't just about a voicemail or a car crash. This is about a family that looked perfect from the outside but was rotting at the core, and how I didn't see it until the world literally crashed around me. Growing up in suburban Seattle, we were the Bennetts, the family everyone envied. Dad, Richard, was a community college professor, loved for his quirky history lectures. Mom, Vanessa, planned events part-time, always the life of the party with her charm and designer scarves. And Liam, my younger brother, was the soccer prodigy who could do no wrong, his trophies lining our mantel while my straight-A report cards gathered dust in a drawer. We had traditions that screamed all-American family. Sunday brunches at the waterfront cafe where Mom would Instagram our pancakes with family goals. Annual ski trips to Whistler, where Liam would show off on the slopes while I read by the lodge fireplace. Thanksgiving parties so lavish they'd put Martha Stewart to shame, with extended family gushing over Liam's latest goal or Mom's perfect table settings. I was the quiet one, the overachiever who got into MIT on a full scholarship. But my victories were footnotes in the Bennett family story. When I graduated top of my class, Mom and Dad skipped the ceremony because it clashed with Liam's state championship. "You understand, Chloe," Dad said, clapping me on the shoulder. "To family priority," I told myself. It didn't matter. I loved them. And love meant sacrifice, right? That's what I believed when I landed a job at Nexus Tech, a cybersecurity firm in Seattle, and climbed the ranks to lead analyst by 27, pulling in a salary that made my eyes pop. It was more money than I'd ever dreamed of, and I wanted to share it with the people who'd raised me. Mom and Dad were always struggling. Dad's professor gig barely covered the bills, and Mom's event planning dried up when clients started using apps like Eventbrite. So when I got my first big bonus, I cleared their $20,000 0 cents credit card debt without a second thought. Their tearful gratitude made me feel like a hero. But that was the beginning of the end. Within a year, I was covering their $3,000 0 cents mortgage, $1,500 0 cents car payments, and $4,000 0 cents in general expenses. By the time I was 28, I was shelling out $15,000 0 cents a month to keep their lives afloat. Mom and Dad retired early, citing health issues that never materialized in doctor's notes. Liam dropped out of college, moved back home, and burned through my money on failed startups that were more about his ego than actual business plans. They upgraded to a waterfront mansion with a private dock. Liam cruised around in a Tesla Cybertruck, and Mom's closet overflowed with Gucci and Prada. All on my dime. I didn't see it as exploitation, not at first. I saw it as love. But cracks started to show when I questioned their spending. When I asked why Dad needed a $5,000 0 cents yacht club membership, he snapped, "Are you saying I don't deserve a little joy in my retirement?" When I suggested Liam get a real job, Mom clutched her pearls and said, "He's finding his path, Chloe. Why can't you support your brother?" The guilt trips were relentless, each one a reminder of how they'd sacrificed for me, though I could never quite pinpoint what those sacrifices were, beyond the bare minimum of parenting. 3 weeks before the crash, I hit my breaking point. I was working 72-hour weeks, barely sleeping, While my family posted selfies from luxury spa weekends I'd funded, I sat them down and said I was cutting their allowance to save for my own condo, a place to call mine after years of renting a cramped downtown apartment. The reaction was apocalyptic. Mom sobbed like I'd stabbed her. Dad yelled about my selfishness, and Liam called me a greedy traitor, spitting venom about how I owed them for every diaper they'd changed. I left their mansion that night with my stomach in knots, guilt warring with resolve. I told myself I'd stick to my plan, but deep down, I wasn't sure I could. Then came the crash. It was 2 a.m., and I was driving home from Nexus Tech after pulling a marathon to secure a major client. My eyes were gritty, my brain fogged, but I was proud. Another win for the team, another step toward a promotion. I didn't see the pickup truck until it was too late. It barreled through a red light at 60th, T-boning my sedan with a screech of metal and glass. The world spun, then went black. I don't remember the paramedics cutting me out of the wreckage or the chopper airlifting me to Harborview Medical Center. I don't remember flatlining for 45 seconds during surgery, my heart stopping as blood poured from my shattered pelvis. All I know is I woke up 3 days later, a broken shell of myself, with no family by my side. The voicemail was the first blow, but it wasn't the last. When I checked my Amex app, still groggy from pain meds, I saw the $25,000, 0 cents charge to Elite Escapes, a luxury travel agency, time-stamped hours after my crash. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring with tears. They hadn't just abandoned me. They'd used my near death as a blank check for their Parisian fantasy. I scrolled through Mom's Instagram, each post a fresh wound. A selfie with the Eiffel Tower, captioned, "Au revoir, Seattle." A video of Liam sipping champagne at a rooftop bar, toasting to La Vie en Rose. They'd planned this trip a month ago, long before my accident, and hadn't even paused when they got the call that I might not make it. I broke then, sobs ripping through me until my cracked ribs screamed. Noah found me like that, curled into myself as much as my braces would allow. He didn't say anything, just sat by my bed and held my hand until the storm passed. "They don't deserve you," he said finally, his voice low but fierce. "Not one bit." His words were a spark in the dark, but I wasn't ready to let them ignite. I was still drowning in the betrayal, each memory of my family's love now tainted by the truth of their greed. The hospital became my world, a sterile cocoon where I pieced myself back together, physically at least. Dr. Emily Carter, the trauma surgeon who'd pulled me back from the edge, checked on me daily, her calm competence a lifeline. Grace Thompson, my 55-year-old roommate recovering from heart surgery, became an unexpected ally, shutting down a nosy resident who asked why my family wasn't around. "She's got me," Grace snapped, her southern drawl sharp as a blade. "That's family enough." Their kindness kept me afloat, but it couldn't fill the hole my family had carved out. Then came the second blow, a post-surgery infection that nearly killed me. My fever spiked to 104 DGF, my body shaking so hard the bed rattled. I heard the nurses shouting about sepsis, felt the cold rush of IV antibiotics as they raced to stabilize me. For hours I hovered on the edge, visions of my family laughing in Paris flickering through my delirium. I survived, but the brush with death hardened something in me. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a fighter, and I was done letting my family bleed me dry. By the time I could sit up without passing out, I was digging deeper. I pulled up my bank statements on my laptop, Noah helping me prop it on a tray table. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. $50,000, 0 cents in unauthorized withdrawals from my accounts, siphoned off while I was in a coma. Cash transfers to Liam's Venmo, boutique charges in Mom's name, even a $10,000, 0 cents deposit to a real estate agent for a vacation home I'd never heard of. They hadn't just taken my money, they'd treated my accounts like their personal ATM, confident I'd never notice. Or maybe they thought I wouldn't survive to care. The rage that built in me was a living thing, coiled and ready to strike. But it wasn't just anger, it was clarity. For years, I'd bought their love with my paychecks, convincing myself it was my duty as a daughter, a sister. I'd ignored the red flags, the way they'd dismissed my achievements, the way they'd guilted me into funding their every whim, the way they'd never once shown up when I needed them. My 21st birthday, when they canceled our dinner plans because Liam had a last-minute scrimmage. My appendectomy at 24, when they visited for 20 minutes before rushing off to a charity gala. The countless times I'd sat alone in my apartment, exhausted from work, while they sent me selfies from trips I'd paid for. I wasn't just their daughter. I was their bankroll, their safety net, their ticket to a life they couldn't afford. And when I'd dared to set boundaries, they doubled down, using my accident as an opportunity to squeeze me for more. The Paris trip wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated move, a middle finger to the daughter they'd never valued. I saw it all now, and it changed everything. Noah was there the night I made my decision. He'd snuck in a contraband burger from Dick's Drive-In, claiming the hospital food was a crime against humanity. We sat in the dim glow of my room, the city lights twinkling through the window, and I told him everything. The money, the voicemail, the Instagram posts that felt like knives in my back. He listened, his jaw tight, and when I finished, he leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. Chloe, you're stronger than this. You've survived a crash, a coma, an infection that would have taken most people out. You can survive them, but you don't have to do it by giving them one more cent. His words hit like a lightning bolt, and for the first time I believed them. I wasn't just surviving, I was going to fight back. The next morning, I called Lauren Kim, the hospital social worker. She listened to my story with a calm intensity, jotting notes in a leather-bound book. When I finished, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "What your family's doing isn't just selfish. It's abuse, emotional, financial, all of it. You don't owe them your life, Chloe. You owe yourself a chance to live it." She gave me pamphlets on codependency and family dynamics. But more than that, she gave me permission to put myself first. It was a radical idea, one I'd never dared to consider. Lauren connected me with Ethan Brooks, a financial advisor who came to my room with a laptop and a no-nonsense attitude. He pulled up my accounts, his expression darkening with every click. "They've got their hands in everything," he said, shaking his head. "Joint accounts, authorized users, even a line of credit in your name you didn't know about. We're talking $75,000, 0 cents in unauthorized charges, Chloe, and that's just what we can." He laid out a plan to lock them out. New accounts, fraud reports, the works. It was daunting, but the thought of cutting their access felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Next came Sophia Reyes, a lawyer Ethan recommended. She was all business, her sharp suit a contrast to the hospital's sterile chaos. "Legally, they have no claim to your money," she said, flipping through my bank statements. "But they'll fight dirty. Save that voicemail, screenshot the Instagram posts, document every penny they've taken. If they try to sue, we'll bury them in evidence." Her confidence was infectious, and for the first time, I saw a path forward, a way to break free without losing everything. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. My Aunt Clara, Dad's estranged sister. She showed up one afternoon, her gray hair pulled into a messy bun, her eyes brimming with regret. "Your colleague Ryan tracked me down," she said, sitting carefully on the edge of my bed. "He found my name in your old emergency contacts." Clara told me things I'd never known. How Mom and Dad had burned through their inheritance, borrowed thousands from relatives they never repaid, even drained my grandfather's savings while he was dying in hospice. "They did it to me too," she said, her voice tight. "When I refused to fund their Florida timeshare, they cut me out of their lives and yours." Clara's story was a mirror to my own, and it shattered the last of my illusions. My family wasn't flawed, but loving. They were predators, and I'd been their prey. Clara offered me her guest cottage in Portland for recovery, a safe haven where I could rebuild. "You're not alone, Chloe," she said, squeezing my hand. "Not anymore." With Clara's words echoing in my head, I started to act. Ethan helped me open new accounts at a bank my family had no ties to, transferring what was left of my savings. I reported the $75,000, 0 cents in fraudulent charges to my bank, triggering an investigation that would freeze the accounts Mom and Dad had been draining. Sophia drafted a cease and desist letter, ready to fire off if they tried to retaliate. And then, with a grim satisfaction, I logged into the airline's website using the booking confirmation Mom had carelessly sent to my email. Their return flights from Paris, business class, naturally, on my Amex, were canceled with a few clicks. The refund credited to my new account. They'd have to figure out how to get home on their own dime. It wasn't enough to just cut them off. I needed to reclaim what was mine. Noah and his cousin Mia volunteered to help me retrieve my belongings from the Bennett mansion while my family was still in Paris. The hospital gave me a day pass, and with a wheelchair and a mountain of pain meds, we drove to the waterfront estate I'd paid for. My key still worked, the security code unchanged. We moved fast, gathering my birth certificate, my grandmother's emerald ring Mom had borrowed years ago, and a box of childhood mementos they'd relegated to the attic. In Liam's room, I found the final nail in their coffin, a contract for a $2 million 0 cents Miami penthouse, with handwritten notes on how to convince Chloe to fund it. They weren't just using me. They were planning to bleed me dry for the rest of my life. We were loading Mia's van when disaster struck. A distracted driver rear-ended us at a stoplight, the jolt sending pain screaming through my spine. For a terrifying moment, I thought I had undone months of healing, but the paramedics who arrived cleared me after a tense examination. "You're lucky," one said, shaking his head. "Another hit like that, and you'd be back in surgery." I didn't feel lucky, but I felt alive, and that was enough to keep going. Back at the hospital, I was a different person. The girl who'd let her family walk all over her was gone, replaced by someone who knew her worth. But the fight wasn't over. Liam had somehow hacked my work email, sending threatening messages to my boss in a desperate bid to sabotage my career. I spent hours with Nexus Tech's IT team, securing my accounts, while my heart pounded with panic. Then came Mom's email claiming she'd had a heart attack and needed $10,000, 0 cents, for emergency treatment. I called the hospital she named, and the nurse confirmed it was a lie. No patient by her name had been admitted. The manipulation was so blatant it almost made me laugh, but the guilt still clawed at me, whispering that I was abandoning them. The pressure didn't stop. My boss, impatient with my recovery, demanded I take on a high-stakes client remotely or risk losing my position. I worked from my hospital bed, my laptop balanced on my lap, pain shooting through my spine with every keystroke. Then, Dad filed a lawsuit claiming I owed them financial support as their dependent caregiver. Sophia laughed when she saw the filing. "It's a Hail Mary," she said, "and it'll crash and burn," but the public scrutiny hurt more. Liam leaked my story to a local tabloid, spinning me as a heartless daughter who'd stranded her family in Paris. Strangers on Twitter called me a monster, not knowing the truth. I wanted to scream it from the rooftops, but Sophia held me back. "Let them dig their own grave," she said. "You've got the evidence." The Bennetts came for me 5 days after their Paris trip imploded. They'd borrowed $10,000, 0 cents, from friends to book economy flights home, their credit cards maxed out from their spending spree. Noah was with me when the hospital called to say they were in the lobby, demanding to see me. "You don't have to face them," he said, his hand on mine. But I was done running. "I need to," I said, "but I want you there." They burst into my room like a storm, Mom's mascara streaked from fake tears, Dad's face purple with rage, Liam's sullen but defiant. "How dare you?" Dad roared, slamming his fist on the tray table. "Canceling our flights, freezing our accounts, humiliating us in front of our friends? You're our daughter." I looked at them, really looked, and saw strangers, people who'd used me, betrayed me, and expected me to thank them for it. "You left me to die," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I was in a coma, and you went to Paris. You stole $75,000, 0 cents from me while I was fighting for my life. You don't get to call yourselves family anymore." Noah stood by my side, his presence a shield, as I handed them Sophia's terms. No more money, mandatory mediation, and respect for my boundary. They laughed, then raged, then begged, cycling through every tactic they knew. But I didn't budge. They left without agreeing, vowing I'd regret it. Liam lingered in the doorway, his eyes conflicted. "They're going to lose everything," he said quietly. "Where do I go?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "Figure it out," I said. "You're 24. It's time to grow up." As the door closed behind them, I collapsed against my pillows, exhausted but free. Noah took my hand, his smile soft. "You did it," he said. "You're unstoppable." I wasn't sure I believed him, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. The road ahead was long: physical therapy, legal battles, rebuilding my life. But I wasn't alone. I had Noah, Clara, Grace, and a growing circle of people who saw me, not my bank account. And I had myself, stronger than I'd ever known. What my family didn't realize was that their betrayal had awoken something in me, a fire they couldn't extinguish. They thought they'd broken me, but they'd only set me free. And I was just getting started. The hospital room was a battlefield, and I was still standing, barely. My confrontation with Mom, Dad, and Liam had left me drained, like I'd run a marathon on my broken body. Their voices still echoed in my head, Dad's furious accusations, Mom's conflicted glance as he trailed them out the door. I'd laid down my terms: no more money, no more exploitation, just a chance at a real relationship through mediation. And they'd thrown them back in my face. But as I sank into the pillows, Noah's hand warm in mine, I felt something new: freedom. It was fragile, raw, and terrifying, but it was mine. I'd drawn a line in the sand, and there was no going back. That night, sleep didn't come easy. The pain meds dulled the ache in my pelvis and ribs, but nothing could quiet the storm in my mind. What would they do next? Would they really disown me, as Dad threatened? Would Liam's hesitation mean anything, or was it just another act? And what about the tabloid story Liam had leaked, painting me as the villain who'd stranded her family in Paris? The thought of strangers judging me, oblivious to the truth, twisted my gut, but Noah's words from earlier that week kept me anchored. "You're unstoppable, Chloe." I clung to that, whispering it to myself as the city lights flickered outside my window. Morning brought a new kind of chaos. My phone buzzed with an email from my boss, Karen, at Nexus Tech. "Chloe, we need you on the Kessler account by Monday. Remote work is fine, but if you can't deliver, we'll have to reassign it. Don't let us down." My heart sank. The Kessler account was my baby, a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity contract I'd spent a year cultivating. Losing it could derail my promotion, maybe even my job, but I was still in a wheelchair, my body a patchwork of steel and scars, barely able to sit up for more than an hour without collapsing. I stared at the screen, panic clawing at me. How was I supposed to code firewalls when I could barely hold a spoon? Noah caught me spiraling as he came in for his morning shift. "What's wrong?" he asked, reading my face like an open book. I showed him the email, my hands trembling. "They're going to take it away from me," I said, my voice cracking. "Everything I've worked for, gone because I can't keep up." Noah pulled a chair close, his eyes steady. "You're not losing anything," he said. "You're in a hospital bed, recovering from a crash that should have killed you. If they can't wait, that's on them, not you." His words were a lifeline, but the pressure was crushing. I had to try, or I'd lose more than just my family. I'd lose my career. I set up my laptop on the tray table, wincing as I adjusted my position. Every keystroke sent pain shooting through my spine, but I pushed through, patching together code for the Kessler firewall between doses of painkillers. Noah hovered nearby, slipping me extra pillows and sneaking in coffee to keep me going. By noon, I'd made progress, but my vision was blurring and my hands shook so badly I nearly deleted a critical file. "You need to stop," Noah said, his voice firm. "You're killing yourself for a job that doesn't care you almost died." I wanted to argue, but he was right. I shut the laptop, tears stinging my eyes. I'd survived my family's betrayal, but could I survive losing everything I'd built? That afternoon, Lauren Kim, the social worker, stopped by with a stack of pamphlets and a determined look. "I've been thinking about your situation," she said, settling into the chair by my bed. "What your family's done, taking your money, abandoning you, manipulating you, it's not just wrong, it's abuse, Chloe. Emotional, financial, the works." She slid a booklet across the table. "Breaking free from toxic family dynamics, you're not alone in this," she said. And you don't have to feel guilty for putting yourself first. Her words hit hard, peeling back layers of guilt I'd carried for years. I'd always thought love meant sacrifice, but Lauren made me see it was a trap, a way to keep me tethered to their demands. As I flipped through the booklet, my phone buzzed with a new email. It was from Mom, the subject line a gut punch. Emergency. Please help? My heart raced as I opened it, expecting the worst. Chloe, I had a heart attack in Paris, she wrote. The hospital bills are piling up, and we're stuck here without funds. Please, honey, reinstate the credit cards. We need you. My stomach churned. A heart attack after everything? Was I supposed to believe her? I called the hospital she named, my hands shaking as I dialed the international number. The nurse on the line was polite but clear. No patient by that name has been admitted. It was a lie, another manipulation to claw back my money. I sat there, stunned, the phone slipping from my hand. The rage was back, hotter than ever, but so was the guilt, whispering that maybe I was wrong. Maybe they needed me. Noah saw the look on my face and didn't need to ask. Another stunt, he said, his voice laced with disgust. I nodded, showing him the email. They're not going to stop, are they? I said, my voice barely a whisper. Noah leaned in, his eyes fierce. Family who abandons you in a hospital bed doesn't deserve your loyalty or your cash. You're done being their ATM, Chloe. You've got to hold the line. His words were a fire in my chest, burning away the guilt. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was their reckoning. That resolve carried me into the next day when Ethan Brooks, the financial advisor, arrived with his laptop and a grim expression. It's worse than we thought, he said, pulling up my accounts. Your parents took out a $30,000 0 cents loan in your name 2 weeks before the crash, forged your signature, used your accounts as collateral, and that's on top of the $75,000 0 cents they siphoned while you were in a coma. My jaw dropped, the numbers blurring on the screen. A loan. They'd not only stolen from me, they'd buried me in debt I didn't even know about. Ethan laid out a plan. Freeze the accounts, report the fraud, and open new ones at a bank they couldn't touch. This is war, he said, his voice steady, but you're going to win. Sophia Reyes, the lawyer, came next, her sharp eyes scanning the documents Ethan had flagged. This is textbook financial abuse, she said, her pen tapping the table. We'll report the loan as fraud, document every unauthorized charge, and build a case they can't fight. Save everything, emails, voicemails, those Instagram posts, flaunting their Paris trip. If they try to sue, we'll hit them with a counterclaim for theft. Her confidence was a lifeline, but the weight of their betrayal was crushing. How could my own family do this? How had I been so blind? The answer came from an unexpected source. Aunt Clara, Dad's estranged sister. She showed up unannounced, her gray hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes heavy with regret. I should have warned you sooner, she said, sitting by my bed. Your parents have a history of this scamming family, draining accounts. They took $50,000 0 cents from your grandfather's savings while he was in hospice, left him with nothing. When I called them out, they cut me off, made sure I couldn't reach you. Her words were a gut punch, confirming what I'd started to suspect. My family wasn't just flawed, they were predators, and I'd been their easiest mark. Clara's story didn't end there. They tried to get me to fund a Florida timeshare 3 years ago, she said, her voice tight. When I refused, they turned to you right after your promotion. They saw you as their golden ticket. She reached for my hand, her grip warm and steady. But you're not alone anymore, Chloe. My guest cottage in Portland is yours when you're discharged. No strings, just a safe place to heal. Her offer was a beacon in the dark, a reminder that family could be more than blood. It could be choice. The next day brought a new crisis. During physical therapy, I was strapped into a spinal brace, trying to take my first steps with a walker. The therapist, a burly guy named Marcus, was cheering me on when the brace buckled, a screw popping loose with a sickening snap. I pitched forward, my heart lurching as the floor rushed up. Marcus caught me just in time, his arms locking around my waist. But the near fall sent pain screaming through my spine. That was too close, he said, his face pale. If you'd hit the ground, we'd be looking at another surgery. My legs shook as he eased me back into the wheelchair, the fear lingering long after the pain faded. I was fighting for my life, and every step felt like a gamble. That night, the hospital was hit by a freak storm. Lightning cracked outside, and the power flickered, then died. The ventilator keeping my roommate Grace stable shut off, and for 10 agonizing minutes, I lay there, my own oxygen mask failing, my lungs burning as I gasped for air. Nurses scrambled in the dark, their flashlights bobbing like fireflies, until the backup generators kicked in. When the lights returned, Grace was sobbing, and I was shaking. The fragility of my survival laid bare. We made it, Noah whispered, checking my vitals. But the close call left me raw, wondering how many more times I could cheat death. The storm wasn't just outside, it was in my inbox too. Liam had escalated his attacks, hacking my work email and sending threatening messages to my colleagues, accusing me of abandoning my family. "She's a liar who left us stranded," one email read, sent to my entire team. Panic surged as I called Nexus Tech's IT department from my hospital bed, my voice hoarse as I explained the breach. We locked down my accounts, but the damage was done. My reputation was under fire, and whispers of the tabloid story were spreading. I felt like I was fighting a war on two fronts: my family's betrayal and my career's collapse. Then came Mom's next move, a masterclass in manipulation. Another email, this one with a photo of her in a hospital gown, claiming she'd collapsed from stress in Paris. "We're destitute, Chloe," she wrote. "You've left us with nothing. Please, just $5,000, 0 cents to get us home." I called the hospital again. Another lie, no record of her. But the guilt was a vice around my heart, squeezing until I could barely breathe. What if she was telling the truth this time? What if I was the monster the tabloids claimed? I showed the email to Sophia, who shook her head. "This is classic gaslighting," she said. "They're banking on your guilt. Don't give in." I didn't. Instead, I doubled down. With Ethan's help, I finalized the financial overhaul, revoking every access point my family had to my accounts. I reported the $75,000, 0 cents in fraudulent charges, triggering a bank investigation that would trace every cent they'd stolen. And then, with a grim satisfaction, I logged into the airline's website and canceled their return flights from Paris. The refund hit my new account, and I pictured them stranded at Charles de Gaulle, scrambling to pay their own way for once. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. The real victory came the next day when Noah and Mia helped me retrieve my belongings from the Bennett mansion. The hospital gave me a day pass and we drove to the waterfront estate, my wheelchair bumping over the gravel drive. Inside, the house felt like a museum of my betrayal. Every luxury I'd funded, from the marble countertops to the crystal chandelier, mocked me. We moved fast, grabbing my birth certificate, old photos, and my grandmother's emerald ring, which Mom had worn to galas while claiming it was hers. In Liam's room, I found the contract for a $2 million, 0 cents Miami penthouse, with notes in his handwriting. Tell Chloe it's an investment, she'll buy it. My blood ran cold. They hadn't just used me. They'd planned to chain me to their dreams forever. We were loading Mia's van when a tailgater slammed into us, the impact jarring my still healing spine. Pain exploded through me, and for a moment I thought I'd black out. Mia called 911, her voice shaking, while Noah held my hand, whispering, "Stay with me, Chloe." The paramedics cleared me, but the fear lingered, a reminder that my recovery was a tightrope walk. Back at the hospital, I was shaking but resolute. I wasn't just reclaiming my belongings. I was reclaiming my life. The Bennetts returned 5 days later, their Paris dream shattered. They'd borrowed $10,000, 0 cents, from friends to book economy flights, their credit cards maxed from their spending spree. My phone lit up with furious emails, each one more unhinged than the last. "You've destroyed us," Dad wrote. "Fix this now or you're dead to us." Mom tried guilt. "How could you do this to your own mother?" Liam's was the worst. "You'll regret this, Chloe. I'll make sure everyone knows what you are." The tabloid story was his doing, I learned later. A calculated move to paint me as a heartless daughter. Strangers on social media called me a spoiled brat. Oblivious to the truth, I showed the emails to Sophia, who was unfazed. "They're lashing out because they've lost control," she said. "Stay strong and we'll handle the fallout." But the fallout was already here. Dad filed a lawsuit claiming I owed them financial support as their caregiver. Sophia laughed it off. "It's a desperate grab," she said. But the public scrutiny stung. The tabloid story gained traction, and I overheard nurses whispering about it in the hall. I wanted to scream the truth, but Sophia held me back. "Let them overplay their hand," she said. "The evidence is on your side." The confrontation came sooner than expected. Noah was with me when the hospital called to say the Bennetts were in the lobby, demanding to see me. "You don't have to do this," he said, his hand on mine, but I was ready. "I need to end this," I said, "with you here." Security stood by as they stormed in, a hurricane of rage and desperation. Mom's mascara ran in streaks, Dad's face was beet red, and Liam looked like he hadn't slept in days. "How dare you!" Dad roared, slamming his fists on the tray table. "You've humiliated us, left us stranded, taken everything." I didn't flinch. "You left me to die," I said, my voice steady. "I was in a coma, and you went to Paris. You stole $75,000, 0 cents, took out a loan in my name, planned to scam me for a Miami penthouse. You're not my family. You're my thieves." Noah stood like a sentinel, his presence grounding me as I handed them Sophia's terms. No money, mediation, respect, or nothing at all. They cycled through every tactic. Anger, tears, threats, even a half-hearted apology. "We made a mistake," Mom sobbed. "But we love you, Chloe." I didn't buy it. Not anymore. They left without agreeing, vowing I'd pay for my betrayal. Liam lingered, his eyes conflicted. They're going to lose the house, he said quietly. Where do I go? I met his gaze unflinching. You're 24, I said. Figure it out. As the door closed, I collapsed, the weight of it all crashing down. Noah caught me, his arms thick. You were incredible, he said, his voice thick with pride. I didn't feel incredible. I felt raw, broken open, but also free. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. My physical recovery crept forward, each step with my cane a small triumph. I walked 3 feet, then 10, then climbed a stair, Marcus cheering like I'd won a marathon. But the emotional scars were deeper. Dr. Rachel Wynn, my therapist, helped me unpack decades of guilt and manipulation. You're not abandoning them, she said during a session. You're choosing yourself. There's a difference. Her words were a balm, but the wounds still bled. Liam surprised me most. After couch surfing for a month, he showed up at the rehab facility, awkward and defensive. I still think you're wrong about Mom and Dad, he said, shifting in the visitor's chair. But what they said about you after we left the hospital, it wasn't right. It wasn't an apology, but it was close enough. I saw a flicker of the brother I'd once loved, buried under years of entitlement. There's a knit job at Nexus Tech, I said. Entry level, but steady. I can put in a word if you're serious. He nodded, and for the first time, I saw hope. Not for us, but for him. Mom and Dad were slower to crack. They sold the mansion, unable to make the mortgage without my money. Dad took a tutoring job. Mom worked retail at Nordstrom, their pride visibly bruised. They tried more manipulation, sob stories about financial emergencies, but I held firm, referring them to Sophia's terms. 8 months after the confrontation, they agreed to mediation. The sessions were brutal, old wounds ripped open, but Dr. Fiona Marshall, our therapist, kept us. Healing isn't forgetting, she said. It's choosing a path forward with boundaries. Progress was slow, but I saw glimmers of their fear. Not of losing my money, but of losing me. I found healing in unexpected places. I joined a trauma survivor group, sharing my story with others who'd faced betrayal. Each Saturday, I sat in a circle, listening to their pain and offering my own, finding strength in our shared resilience. My friendships grew too. Zoe from college, Ryan from work, Clara, who became my rock, and Noah. God, Noah. What started as a nurse's compassion became something more. Our first date was a rooftop picnic at the hospital, him sneaking in pizza and us laughing under the stars. By the time I was discharged, we were building something real, rooted in trust and care. A year after the crash, I stood in my new Seattle loft, a first-floor unit with wide doorways for my occasional cane. I'd gone back to work part-time, my boss finally easing off after I delivered the Kessler account flawlessly. My savings were rebuilding, free from my family's drain. I hosted a gathering. Noah, Clara, Zoe, Ryan, even Grace from the hospital, and tentatively, Mom, Dad, and Liam. It wasn't perfect. Tensions simmered, old habits creeping in, but it was honest. A new kind of family, built on truth. As the night wound down, Noah and I stood by the window, the city lights stretching out like a promise. What are you thinking? He asked, his fingers laced with mine. I smiled, leaning into him. That sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best changes. If they hadn't betrayed me, I might never have found this, us, me, a life that's mine. He kissed my forehead, and for the first time I felt whole, not because the pain was gone, but because I'd grown around it. My family thought they'd broken me, but they'd only set me free. And now, with every step, I was writing a new story, one where I was the hero, not the victim.